I thank you for being here today, everybody. First, I want to thank Jim Harbaugh for 4 great seasons with the 49ers. He helped us restore a winning culture, a fiery, competitive culture. I am greatly appreciative of that. I wish him the best. I wish Sarah and his children the best wherever they end up going forward. He will always be a part of this franchise, and I will remember his time here very, very fondly. I want to thank our great fans, the 49er faithful. We didn't give you enough to cheer for this year, but that didn't stop you from coming out, even in the last 2 games where we really didn't have anything to play for. We weren't playing for a playoff contention, and you guys brought it. And I appreciate that. I appreciate everything that you guys do for us, and it's up to us to make sure we compete for and win Super Bowls. That's our only goal. We don't raise division championship banners. We don't raise NFC championship banners. We raise Super Bowl banners. And whenever we don't deliver that, I hope that you will hold me directly responsible and accountable for it. And we look forward to getting this thing back on track and getting you guys exactly what you deserve.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to, reiterate is exactly what Jed said in so many ways. First of all, a huge thank you to Jim and his leadership. We accomplished a lot of good things, the ultimate prize in this business is Super Bowls. We all know that. We all understand it. It's what we sign up for going into it. And we didn't reach that goal of a victory, but we got very close on numerous times. And Jim was a huge part of that. He's moved on, and there's no doubt he's a heck of a football coach, and he's going to enjoy success at his next stop, wherever that may be. I know there's speculation of where that may be, but I certainly wish him nothing but the best moving forward, him and his family. And once again, I have no doubt that he'll accomplish great things moving forward.
Jed, you guys are in the business of winning football games. Jim did that as well as anybody. Why isn't he the coach of the 49ers?
And this was a mutual decision. Jim and I have had conversations, since he's been here. But in the last probably 2 to 3 weeks, we've talked about it. We've talked about different scenarios, different opportunities. And ultimately, we just came to the conclusion that it was best for us to go in different directions.
But if you have a coach that is so successful, why weren't you able to make that work? Why weren't you able to get the off-the-field issues that you guys might have had, make them better so that you can retain one of the highest winning percentage coaches in the history of the NFL?
Again, we've had philosophical discussions. And when we sat down, we just couldn't come to a place where we thought moving together was the best for either party. This wasn't us saying, Jim, you're fired, you're not here anymore. This wasn't Jim saying, I don't want to be there, I'm leaving. It was a discussion that took place over, a decent amount of time to figure out what's best for everybody involved. And, it was a conclusion that we came to. It wasn't an easy conclusion for anybody, but that's where we ended up.
Can you shed some light on the philosophical issues?
Sorry?
Can you shed some light on the philosophical issues that you guys had?
The discussions that we had were private. I'm not going to get into the private discussions. It was just, it was the right decision for both parties at the time.
Ed and Trent, why are you confident that you can get a better coach now than Jim Harbaugh was or is? For both of you.
Well, when you talk about confidence, I don't think that's the, I don't look at it like that. This organization has had to replace some awfully successful head coaches in the past, and Jim is no different, a very successful coach. And are we confident that we can replace him? You always go into that with that strategy. There's a lot of good football coaches out there. And what we need to do is go out and find a coach that can come in here now and lead this football team. We're not in a rebuild. This isn't a rebuild situation. This is a reload situation. Got a lot of confidence in this team, the players in that locker room. And we're going to need to make some adjustments. We realize that, but I think what Jed said is so true. There's always philosophical differences. There always is. Every organization has them, and for whatever reason, we weren't able to pull this thing together, and now it's time to move on, and we're confident in our ability to do that.
There were a series of reports about this too from the beginning of the season, about Jim's status, whether he would be the coach next year. Were you the source of any of those stories?
No.
Were you concerned at all when you saw those stories?
Listen, I mean, there are distractions for every team in every situation. And as a professional organization, you need to figure out how to put the distractions aside and move forward. So, when Jim and I sat down before the season started, going into the year, he had this year and next year under contract. It's not abnormal for somebody to have 2 years left on a deal. So it wasn't like this was a lame duck coaching year. And if I understand correctly, Jason Garrett is in a lame duck coaching year. They're the only team that's been 8-0 this season on the road. They're in the playoffs. They're playing pretty good football. So I don't think that's, it's not a great example of there was a distraction before, you didn't have a long-term contract in place with Jim, so that's why this season didn't go the right way. And I don't think Jim made that as an excuse, and I'm not making it an excuse. So I don't think that's really a significant issue.
Why didn't at any point you say these reports are wrong?
I did. I said Jim's my coach.
That's not saying the reports are wrong.
I mean, I can say all of your reporting is wrong. I can go through that, but I don't read all of the reports. That's just not my responsibility. That's not my job. Jim and I have had great conversations behind closed doors. We knew what we agreed to before the season started, and we said we'd sit down at the end of the year and figure out what his future was. And we were very clear about that. That's what Jim said, and that's what I said. And I don't think we deviated from that the entire season.
Was it Super Bowl or maybe don't come back?
He had never heard that from me. But again, I think you've all heard from me from the time that I came to San Francisco. I only have one goal on the field, and that's to win the Super Bowl. So Jim has certainly heard that, but it wasn't, if we don't win the Super Bowl, you aren't back here. That was never iterated.
Jed, you and your parents had 3 swing and misses on hiring coaches before you hit with Jim, who got you as close to a Super Bowl as anyone in this organization has had. So how can you say to the fan base that you think you're going to get a better hire, hire someone who's closer? I mean, what faith do they have in that?
I think we did a good job hiring the last time when we hired Jim, and folks in the media didn't think we'd hire somebody that was a good coach. Trent Baalke, who's been, a player personnel, I'm blanking on the title, but the personnel man of the year. I think we've demonstrated that we can make good hires. My uncle swung and missed many times, and I've had great conversations with him about making sure you get the right group of people and the people that understand what you want as an organization, and that's what we're doing. And again, I'll be the first to tell you, if we aren't winning a Super Bowl, you should hold me accountable. You should jump down my throat. I welcome that, and I'm ready for the challenge.
How accountable are you and Trent for what went wrong this season?
We're all accountable.
In what ways?
We didn't win the Super Bowl. If we don't win the Super Bowl, we are not executing on our vision. Our mission is very simple. The San Francisco 49ers win with class. We haven't won, and I don't think we've conducted ourselves with the level of class that I expect of our organization. We've had off-the-field issues. That's going to happen in sports. The level that it's happened here is not acceptable.
You let Jim, both of you pretty much let Jim take all the heat for those off-the-field issues and all the responsibility. Do you feel responsible for those off-the-field issues?
Well, I can answer that, Ann, because, as we stated many times, Jim and I, we were going to make decisions together. And during the season, Jim was going to be the voice of the football team, and that's how we operated. All of the decisions that we made collectively, and made collectively from the start of Jim's tenure to the finish of Jim's tenure. So he was always involved, and rightfully so was the voice of the football team and the organization during the season. And that's how it was designed when we started 4 years ago.
And I don't believe that's going to change with our next head coach. I mean, our next head coach, the head coach deals with the team and the media on almost a daily basis. I don't think you see CEOs doing daily or weekly media interviews and conferences.
You do when there's large off-the-field controversial issues that
And-
engulf.
And I was on KNBR after the last interview.
What'd you guys learn from this last year?
Well, you learn a lot every day in this business. There's not a day that goes by that you don't learn something that's going to make you better. And you continue to strive. This is a tough business. The NFL stands for not for long. That's been a running joke amongst coaches, amongst front office people for a long time. And it's never the same. Every decision that you make, you can look back and try to relate it to something you made earlier, whether that's in personnel acquisition, play calling. You're constantly learning, and that's never going to stop. We have to learn to communicate better in this organization, and we talk about it daily. And there's a lot of things that as players we need to do better, as coaches we need to do better, as personnel people we need to do better. But you could ask me that after we win the Super Bowl, and it'd be the same response.
Sure, but given the way this season turned out, I think what people wonder,
What'd
you learn?
I think what I would say to that, Mark, is, when you go from not getting to the playoffs for 10 years, and you get there in year one of a coach's tenure, even if they have hard discussions, you need to find a way to continue to get better. And I would say for me personally, there are things that I didn't necessarily like, year one, year two, year three, that you don't speak more loudly on because you win. And that's my failure. And Ann, you asked about that with off the field stuff. There were things that, in conversation that we had, I know what my gut was, and we had conversations and we did things that probably doesn't gel well with who I am. And I would rather do the things that we need to, but stay at a level of class that I expect of the San Francisco 49ers. And this isn't shooting at Jim and saying, well, Jim made all these decisions. I want you to clearly hear that. I'm not saying that. If you want to make a decision on, things that you're talking about, like Ray McDonald. Ray McDonald was ultimately my decision to not do anything. It was. And when his first issue came up, he was not charged with anything. We sat down with Ray and said, Ray, whether you were guilty or not, you can't put yourself in these types of positions. And very shortly after that, he did that again. You need to make sure people are accountable. That's up to me. We might not win the Super Bowl every year, but we can conduct ourselves with class. And we can conduct ourselves in a way that makes me proud. And there are things that, and I will put that on me. I'm not putting this on Jim, and please understand this. This is not
Jim
me.
was being held accountable, and you guys weren't
We're all,
necessarily.
I'm accountable.
When you sent out that tweet, was that acting with class on Thanksgiving? You're the one who's brought up the topic.
Yeah, when we invite 70,000 people to change their Thanksgiving Day, routines and rituals, and we perform the way we did, I'm disappointed by that. I apologize to our fans when we didn't give them a reason to cheer, and they were there. They cheered and they stayed there for the entire game, and they did an unbelievable job for us, and we didn't live up to that.
I can tell you that I get a lot of mail and a lot of tweets. Very few people defended you on that. You may have a reason.
That's fine.
And Trent may agree with you. I can tell you that my readership really does not think you acted with class then. And maybe when Mark asks what you learned, maybe that's something you need to learn.
Thanks for the lesson, Lowell.
It's
Trent?
my pleasure.
Trent, some of the most successful franchises in the NFL have a very strong working relationship between the general manager and the head coach. Jim was your first hire. Just learning from that experience, how important is it going to be for you in this next hire to have that close working relationship, and how will you ensure that?
Well, in order to be successful, and this goes back to Mark's question a little earlier on what'd you learn, distractions are difficult to overcome. There's no question about that. And we faced a lot of them this year. It's my job to make sure that you're always going to have some, but you have to minimize them wherever you can. And I didn't do a good enough job of that. I met with the coaching staff this morning and expressed that very thing. It's so difficult to win, and the wins come down to such little details, and we didn't do a good enough job of controlling that. But the relationship between Jim and I think oftentimes was very misrepresented in the media, very misrepresented. I don't read all the accounts, but certainly am briefed on things that are going on, and you couldn't help but notice all of the controversy in the articles that were written. But it wasn't like that day to day. It really wasn't. And I think Jim has come out and said that. I've come out and said it on multiple occasions. But the louder we talked, the less it was heard. And the bottom line is the relationship between a general manager and a head coach have to be in sync. There's going to be disagreements, and there's going to be a competitive balance to it, but they have to be in sync. And I know Jim would say the same thing. I don't want to put words in his mouth by any stretch, but coming to work day to day in this organization for the last 4 years has not been as reported.
Jed, what qualities are you looking for in the next head coach?
I want a teacher. I think what made Bill Walsh so successful is that he was a great teacher, whether that was players or whether that was other coaches. And you look at his successful coaching tree. I mean, I think if you look in the 49ers Hall of Fame down the road, I want to say as of 2012 or 2013, 29 of the 32 coaches in the NFL had either a direct or indirect relationship with Bill. And that's what made this organization so successful. You're able to transition from one 3-time winning Super Bowl head coach to another 2-time Super Bowl winning head coach. And there were many other tentacles beyond that. What I want to make sure that we have is somebody that understands that level of teaching, understands how to get more out of less, and continue to build an organization that wins both on and off the field.
Trent, how transparent is this search going to be? Are we going to know what candidates you're bringing in
Who is that for?
for you?
Are we ever transparent in what we do? I think Cam, to answer that, you'll know what I think everybody else knows. This is going to be a search that we're going to conduct with a small group of people involved, a very small group, and we're going to spend the next several weeks interviewing, 7 to 10 days, hopefully, and then hopefully be in a position to make a decision at that point in time. But we're going to take as long as necessary to make sure that we have the right person in place.
Trent, from what you said, the way you outlined and explained your relationship with Jim, it certainly doesn't sound like you had any sort of, philosophical differences that couldn't have been reconciled. Is that accurate? And if so, Jed, was it mostly about your issues with Jim?
Well, as Jed stated earlier, we're not going to get into the exact philosophical differences. It was a mutual parting of the ways, that there were some issues that we weren't going to come full circle on. And we made that decision to move on. But going back to what I said earlier, there are always, it's the nature of the beast. There are always things that you're not going to totally agree on. And that's part of the business. And it's been part of the business for a long time.
Well, what I hear from fans is, it's something short of getting into fistfights with a coach who's been not successful. Then everyone's grown men, and you work it out because you want to win a Super Bowl. And if that's the head coach that can do that for you, you just find a way. Obviously you guys feel like there was just no way to work that out. Is that accurate?
Again, it was a mutual parting. I mean, this was on two different parties. This was on us, and this was on Jim. So, I mean, it wasn't that one side had a philosophical difference that couldn't overcome it. This was two parties that, decided that it was best to move in separate directions.
Trent, you
Will
met with
Jim
the coaches.
Tonsula and Vic Fangio get interviews for this job?
Well, I would like to share the same respect for them that I share for anyone else that's going to be interviewed. It wouldn't be fair to name any names of in-house if we're not going to name names of people outside of our own house.
You met with the
do you
coaches this
already
morning.
have, Jed, do you already have like a short list of people that you maybe have approached and, or will approach, and do we expect?
We haven't approached anybody yet.
I understand. Let me rephrase it better. Do you have a short list of people that you would like to approach? And
No, I mean, I think we have an idea of who fits that quality of a teacher and somebody that can come in and build everything that we're looking for. But, I mean, to say it's a short list, I don't think we want it to be a short list. I think that we have a very talented football team that didn't live up to what we expect this season. We need to get better. We need to find the right person to come in. And again, it's not about going out and saying, okay, we found somebody and this is everybody that the media likes and, we win the press conference. Like, we're not out to win the press conference. We're out to find out who is the right coach and go through everything that we possibly can and make sure that this is the person that's going to be here for the next 10 plus years and hopefully have a successor. And make sure that we have those levels of conversations with people and understand everything that we're looking for going in and make sure that this is a detailed process that we end up with the right guy for the San Francisco 49ers.
Could you give us a clue about how some of the mechanics will work, though? Trent, will you interview a bunch of candidates and bring a certain number of them to Jed, or how many candidates will
We'll do them
Jed
together.
order? You'll do them together?
Yes.
Trent, you met with the coaching staff
Right,
this
you
morning.
have put in requests with other NFL teams to speak to their assistants, correct?
Wouldn't acknowledge that at this moment, no.
But
Trent,
Jed
you met
said
with
you
the
have an
coaching
But
staff.
that's probably a safe assumption.
You met with the coaching staff this morning. What did you tell them, and has any of the assistants been relieved of their duties?
Well, I mean, what I shared with them is going to stay in-house, but let's face it, this is more than just coaching. There's a humanistic side to all this. There's families involved, and I think we need to keep that in mind and respect that. This is a tough time for everybody. These aren't easy days. And in this business, I've been through this now twice, and it's not easy. So you do the best you can. You represent the organization with class. You talk to them about the things that are important to them at the moment, keeping in mind what I said earlier with reference to being a very human thing. And we can't forget that. Sometimes in the media, it's all about, answers and stuff, and I get that. But with this right now, what we shared with the coaches, I'm going to leave in-house.
And we have a lot of good coaches on this staff. I think we've shown probably a different approach than other teams of trying to keep coaches from previous staffs. I wouldn't rule that out, but that's not a decision that I want to make, and that's not a decision that Trent's going to make. We want whoever's going to be the head coach. And, that is part of the message that you send to guys. And if there are people that have another opportunity and they think that's best for their family, we respect that. And again, this is not an easy week for people. I'm going to be here. I'm not really concerned about that. There are assistant coaches that they might not know where they're going to be. And this is a tough week for them.
And given the way you're talking about distractions, however they occurred throughout the season and the way the season turned out, not making playoffs, would it maybe have been better to let Jim go last year?
Again, we've gone through that. Cleveland called and asked permission to talk to Jim and said that they were interested in Jim, and they had reason to believe that there was interest. I asked Jim. He said he had never had a conversation, and if somebody connected with him had that, he wasn't privy to it. I believe him. I mean, I think with what Jim Harbaugh did for the San Francisco 49ers, he deserved our full support. I think he had our full support. And unfortunately, we couldn't find a way to continue to work together.
Do you think the drumbeat of stories, wherever they came out, undermined this season? Forget about his tenure this season.
Look, again, I mean, you're talking about distractions, and there are distractions for any team. And, you know, I can't say what undercut this season. You know, there were injuries. There were media reports. There were a lot of different things. And unfortunately, we didn't overcome them. And ultimately, it doesn't matter what the distractions were. It matters that we had an ultimate goal and we didn't achieve it. And I'm not pinning that on Jim. I'm not pinning that on Trent. Ultimately, that's my responsibility. I'm the one that people should hold accountable for a failure or a victory. I mean, that's ultimately on me. So again, here, I am not saying Jim is the reason why we didn't get to and win the Super Bowl this year.
So Jed, you have a coach that just averaged over 12 wins a year in 4 years. What will the expectation be for a coach coming in?
To win the Super Bowl.
Right away in year one?
We expect to win the Super Bowl every year.
And is
That is our goal.
expectation? So what if that coach doesn't win the Super Bowl in the first couple of years?
And then we're going to have to figure out if that's the right fit.
Jed,
Jed, you said-
is Trent accountable for that then? He has to win the
Absolutely.
Super Bowl.
Absolutely, he's accountable.
So when does that start coming into play?
Do you have a stopwatch?
Jed, you said you haven't approached anybody yet. Might you have approached another team to get permission to approach someone?
I mean, I think Alex asked that question, and I mean, we want to be respectful to the process, but it's fair to assume that we are doing all the things that we need to start this process.
So you talked about.
We're not going to release names, and I just don't think that that's fair and appropriate for the folks that we talk to or everybody that's involved in this.
So just to clarify, the entire coaching staff is intact right now? Nobody's been fired today?
It is. It's still intact.
Nobody has been fired today.
Nobody's been let go.
So you've talked about accountability.
Sorry.
You've talked about accountability. You have a whole lot of fans who really don't know what happened. They know 3 good years, 1 bad year, and everything has changed. What do you say to them? Just trust you in a sense because you're not really revealing what actually happened. And for the fans who don't know, what do you say to them?
Again, I mean, I don't think it's fair to Jim to reveal the conversations that he and I have had behind closed doors, that we said are going to stay behind closed doors. So, I mean, I'm not going to betray that trust, whether Jim is the head coach here or not. I'm not going to betray that trust. And again, you know, we're going to do everything that we can to put the right people in place. And we can say anything that we want today. I guarantee you, if I know one thing, we are not going to win today's press conference. Like, that's not going to happen. We're going to win by putting together the right staff and accomplishing the goals that we set out for ourselves. And I'm fully cognizant of that, and I'm fully cognizant that people might doubt what we're doing. And that's fair. That's completely fair. And I welcome that. But we're going to put together the right group of people, and I think we've made it very clear what our goal and objective is. And if we don't achieve that, you should hold us accountable.
Jed, you said 2 to 3 weeks ago, started the conversations with Jim that led to a mutual agreement. Even if there's a mutual breakup, there has to be one party that starts it first, starts the conversation. Without saying what you guys talked about, who started that conversation that led to this?
I mean, I don't know if it was a conversation that led to this. It was a conversation that an owner and a head coach have. You sit down and assess where you are. And, I mean, we really didn't start that until we were out of the playoff hunt. I didn't think it was appropriate to sit down and assess the season before. And, I mean, to me, yes, we had games, but if you're not playing for the playoffs, it's a lot easier to at least think about what's going forward. We didn't want more distraction, more things on the plate of what are we doing. Now, obviously, Jim was under contract for next season. Once that took place where we were out, you know, I mean, we both decided to sit down. I mean, it was fairly mutual. I mean, we saw each other and said, okay, let's sit down and talk.
And we're going to start winding this thing down.
You signed
so you're
Colin
aware.
Kaepernick to a very large contract, not all of it guaranteed, but a very big number. How did you think he performed this year, and how important do you think the head coach hiring is for his development?
I mean, the quarterback position is the most important position in all of sports. I mean, period. And I think Colin, you know, did some things very well this year, and there are things that he needs to improve on. You know, and that's something that is very important. I mean, I don't think you have a more important position in sports than quarterback.
That's the balance that you're going to have to strike with this hire, bringing in an offensive staff while your defense played very well throughout the season while trying to keep continuity on defense. Is that the approach that you guys are taking to this interview process?
Man, I think when you look at the game of football, the one word you're searching for all the time is consistency. Consistency in how you operate, consistency in each player doing his job at a very consistent level, whether that's the quarterback position, the punter, the kicker, the offensive guard, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're striving for. And when you talk about doing something consistently, you need to find teachers, good teachers. And our coaching staff has done a very good job of that. And for whatever reason, we were 8-8 this year. There are no excuses, and it starts with me. And as you move forward, as we move forward as an organization, we're looking for teachers, people that can come in, teach the game at a very high level, and play and get our players to play as consistently as possible. And I think if we can achieve that, we'll find success on the field.
Jen, when precisely did you and Jim reach the mutual agreement that you would not be returning?
I don't know the precise moment.
Was it before this last game? Was it after the game?
I mean, Jim announced to the team at the end of the game.
Jed, is Jim free to sign with an NFL team at any point?
Yes.
No compensation to you. His last year is gone.
No. So I mean, that was obviously part of everything that went into it. And I mean, I just felt like if we weren't going to be together, I mean, whether we got compensation or not, like that just wasn't important to me. I thought Jim deserved the respect of being able to figure out where he wanted to go, where his family wanted to go. And, you know, again, we wish him the best of luck wherever he ends up.
Jed, Jim isn't here, but Trent is here. And in a sense, you've thrown in your lot with Trent. Why? Why is it that you are with Trent right now?
I mean, I don't know if I agree with the premise of the question where it was Trent or Jim. Like that wasn't the case.
Okay, but
and that wasn't the case from any conversations.
So let's put Jim out of it for a moment.
Yep.
What qualities in Trent attract you and keep him here as the man in charge?
I think Trent's been a good leader for us. I think Trent has been good at being able to identify talent. He shares my vision of, you know, really it's Super Bowl or bust. And he understands that. I mean, we had the conversation the other day, you know, about where are we going, and we need to get this right. Trent understands he needs to get this right. And there's no lack of accountability with Trent.
Both of you guys have mentioned teaching as a very important quality in coaching. What kind of teacher was Jim Harbaugh?
I thought Jim was great with our quarterbacks. I thought he did a lot of great things from a teaching standpoint.
Just not, I mean, he was just more position specific.
Well, I mean, I think he definitely focused offensively. But again, like, we wanted somebody that can help get our quarterbacks and get our offense straight. And I thought Jim did a really good job of that.
Looking for, just because you highlighted that quality as something you're looking for, what Walsh had, are you guys both looking at someone who can teach other positions just as well?
Well, if you're a football coach, you can coach, right? I mean, you can coach a variety of positions. And you ask the question, you know, how was Jim? Jim's a good football coach, and he's a good teacher. And you look at the success he's had, it's evident that he's a good teacher. So that's all we're trying to do is carry that message forward. And you look at the coaches, and I've been around some awfully good football coaches. going back to Coach Parcells and Coach Schottenheimer, Coach Belichick. I've been around a lot of very good football coaches that have had a lot of success in this business. And the one thing that's clearly evident in all of them is they're good teachers. They have very good command of the game of football and can teach it at a lot of different levels, a lot of different positions. So that's what you're looking for moving forward, is an individual that can do those things, not only amongst players, but amongst his own coaches as well.
Couple more guys.
When you talk about winning with class, what does that mean?
I mean, winning, I think we've defined that. I don't think we need to go into that more. I think class, I understand that there will be off-the-field issues, but we need to make sure that as an organization, we're helping our guys. Seeing our guys today and seeing some of the guys, I want to make sure that our players, if you play into your 30s, you're pretty lucky. If you play into your 40s, you're probably a kicker. I want to make sure that our guys have a great career and a great life after football. I want to make sure that we don't just ask them to go out and win football games for us. We have our team make the community a better place. We have our guys embrace the community and understand what it means to be a San Francisco 49er. And our guys, I want them to be successful outside of this game. I think that's one of the things that Bill Walsh did better than probably any other coach. You look at the successful players that he had on the field and look at how successful they've been off the field. He was a great mentor to them, and he was a great teacher to them both on and off the field. And that's really important to me in the greater scope and greater scheme of things.
Drafting and bringing in
Absolutely.
quality character players?
Absolutely. And there are guys that, they might not be, 100% choir boy, perfect quality players. And, the NFL is made up of teams that have mixtures of personalities. You need to find a way to get to the guys that are potentially on the edge, that have the ability to really be good guys. And maybe they didn't have the greatest background, they didn't have the greatest upbringing, but that doesn't mean that they're bad people. And that's where you get to the teacher to make sure that you find a way to keep those guys, instead of going to the other side, keeping them on the side of the road that fits with our core values.
Trent,
No,
you said
Harbaugh
none of
have done
the
more to-
assistants- You said none of the assistants have been fired. Have you given them permission to leave for other opportunities?
What was said to them, Matt, and once again, I'm not going to get into all the particulars, but on a case-by-case basis, between myself or the organization, I should say, and the coach, we're going to handle that individually amongst those individuals.
So some you will hold to their contracts, others are free to leave.
Well, what we've said is there's a 7 to 10 day window here, and that's just to put a window on it. But it could last longer. It could be shorter. But giving them all an opportunity to at least visit with the new head coach when that head coach is named, to see what their status would be here.
Jed, do you feel like Jim Harbaugh could have done something differently or something more to prevent the number of off-field incidents?
I think we all could have. I mean, this isn't, again, this is not just Jim. Trent could have done more, I could have done more. We all could have done more, and we all should have done more.
But you had
Specifically,
ultimate
Jed.
say over the roster when Jim Harbaugh was the head coach. Will you remain with that ultimate decision, or will that be something you would negotiate with the new head coach?
That's in my contract, and I would think that's the way it's going to stay. But to go back on something, I think that was a big topic that was expressed as one of the reasons that Coach and I didn't get along. And I think Coach addressed that as well. And that was never an issue. That was never an issue. In 4 years, was that ever an issue? So to set the record straight right now, that was always in my contract, was for all 4 years of Jim's tenure, and never once was that an issue.
Jed, what specifically, back to what you just addressed on what you could have done differently, anyone could have done differently to avoid the off-field issues?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is accountability. I think whenever you let accountability slip, you let what happened happen. And I think we need to make sure that our players are held accountable.
Would you choose again to bring Alden back for next year or to not discipline Ray McDonald initially? Are those decisions that you?
Listen, I mean, like when you look at Ray McDonald, Ray hadn't had much trouble off the field. You know, there were multiple people that were there, and it's a lot easier for me to talk about that specific incident now that it's behind us. It's hard to talk about something when it's in the media and there's an ongoing investigation. So when you look at that situation, when you had multiple people there that were both players and non-players that said that they didn't believe that domestic violence took place, you know, it's hard to believe somebody when it's one-on-one. When there's multiple evidence and you go through a long, drawn-out, you know, police investigation and then, you know, the legal investigation, that's the sense that we had sitting down with Ray. There were other things that we talked to Ray about, and there have been incidents with alcohol. I mean, we need to make sure that we are much better with alcohol on this team. And that was one of the things. And, you know, the next incident that came up with Ray, I have no idea what happened, but I know Ray put himself in another position. And it hurts me to know that Ray, who has been a good kid with us, put himself in that position. Again, whether he's guilty or not, I have no idea, and I'm not making a claim one way or the other. But it was very clear to us at that point that Ray wasn't going to be here, and we had those conversations. We've had those conversations with Alden. I personally think Alden's a pretty good kid. You know, he has things that he needs to overcome. You know, when you look back to letting him play in the Indianapolis game, that was a very, very tough decision. I said that at that point. It's unprecedented that a player would leave in the middle of a season and go to rehab. You know, but he's got to continue to work on that. He understands that very clearly. And that's something that we need to hold him accountable for. And we need to make sure that we keep him going in the right direction. And I hope everybody understands whether they're here or not. And I talked to the guys today, and I talked about winning with class. I said, you know, you guys are responsible for how you act outside of this building. Don't get cut because of something you do off the field. You're the ones that control that. And that needs to come directly from me. And when that slips, you see a level of accountability slip. And that's not acceptable. I mean, if you want to blast me for something, by all means, blast me for that. That will not happen. We might make decisions that people don't completely agree with, but we are going to hold our players and hold our coaches and hold the entire organization accountable for their actions.
Jed, two more, please.
Alden
Did
Smith's
any
name.
NFL teams ever contact you about a potential trade for Jim Harbaugh?
I'm sure my answer here gives you your answer.
Did you ever talk to Jim about whether he might be amenable to such a trade?
We had a lot of conversations, and ultimately, you know, we thought it was the best and fairest thing if we weren't going to continue to work together to let Jim decide his own future.
Trent, you had a lot of players who loved Harbaugh. How difficult was it to tell them their coach was gone, in a sense?
Well, it's never easy to lose a coach, whether it's a successful program or not very successful. When a head coach departs, it's never easy on the players, nor should it be. There's a lot. People have to realize how much goes into preparing a team, especially at the NFL level, to play on Sundays. The time commitment, the amount of time they spend together. So that's never easy. And it wasn't any easier yesterday for the players or today for the players as it would have been in any other situation. He was a well-liked coach.
Last one.
Speaking of accountability, I'm going to hold Bob Lang accountable for 2 more questions. Is this the best question, Eric? Do you have the best question to end the day on?
I'm proud of it.
Okay.
I'm really
All
proud
right.
of it.
Okay.
Trent, you did, unless I misunderstood you, you said you could have done a better job minimizing the distractions. You obviously go on the radio once a week, but you don't have a very public voice. Is part of perhaps being able to better minimize distractions if they occur in the future, being more outspoken or speaking to the media more, or just having more of a voice?
Well, I don't know that was the best question to end this on.
I still remain proud.
You know, I don't really enjoy these press conferences, as many of you know, and certainly not one of this nature. Not my style, I guess, to be out in front, and I really believe that once the season starts, it needs to be one voice. I've always believed that and will continue to believe that. I think the head coach, once the season starts, is the voice of the team. There are things that I can do better, a lot of things that I can do better. Just ask my wife. But I think we'll continue to operate very much how we have. In season, the head coach will be the voice. Off season, you'll hear more from myself. And then, of course, Jed, whenever he wants to speak, can speak. He's the owner of the football team. So I don't see that changing. But I do think I can help minimize distractions in-house, internally, without having to get out in the public, because I tried that this year. Asked many a times this year about the relationship between Jim and I. Was very forthright, very honest every time I was asked, and every time it was written a different way. So I don't know that me getting out in front of it helps eliminate any distractions. What you need to do is eliminate them before they get out in the public, and that's the best way to do it.
All right.
Eric, I appreciate that, but I'm going to give it one more time. Does anybody have a great question to end on?
It seems like most of the fan.
Is this a great question?
It's borderline great.
Does anybody think that they have a great question? I just want to see a show of hands. Who thinks they have a great question? Matt does. Why don't we do these two?
Jen.
Come on. Those two, I want to make sure we get the great questions out of the way before we end.
I think it's safe to say that most of the fan reaction we're all hearing over the last 24 hours is pretty strongly negative towards Jim Harbaugh leading his team.
Completely understand that.
Are you surprised at all by the intensity of the backlash?
Listen, I mean, I've seen a lot of people, and if you want to read my Twitter feed, like you get a really good sense for like the absolute like far end of just vitriol, like you're the worst person in the world. Like I get that. You know, I walked through the stadium yesterday. I walked on the field yesterday, and you know, I laughed because one of the elevators was blocked off for the coaches. So we went down the concourse, and I was like, great day to pick going down the concourse. I really appreciate that with our stadium security staff. You know, people were very nice and respectful to me in person. I think it's very easy to have that nature of reaching out and lashing out at people through Twitter. You know, but personally, when you sit down and have a conversation with people, I think it was very reasonable yesterday, and nobody came out, nobody attacked, nobody said anything, and there were folks that voiced their opinion and what they wanted to see happen. And you know, Jim is a very good football coach. I certainly understand why our fans would want him to stay, and you know, again, like I'm not going to get back into the details, but I certainly understand why they want him to stay. But I also understand that there's a level of, you know, people that are commenting on articles, people that are sending tweets. There's no accountability in that you're not going to hold somebody to. You're not going to see that person that guy in person. So I don't take that as personally as having conversations with folks. But I certainly understand why people feel like, you know, they're upset. I get it.
Matt, great question.
Trent Baalke, I think, is a great question.
Yeah, too.
Alden Smith's name came up in a affidavit the other day. Are you guys satisfied that there's nothing to it, or is that something that you're still looking into at this point?
Well, once you're looking at accountability, and every situation's different, okay? We're not going to react every time there is one of our players' names gets involved in the media, however it got involved. But what we are going to do is look into it, all right? Visit with the player, find out exactly what happened, and make the best decision we can for the organization. I think Jed's made it very clear today. We made it very clear to the players on multiple occasions, and hit it home again today when Jed met with the team and when I met with the team, that moving forward, this is what we can expect to happen as players. And this is how we are going to conduct ourselves, and this is what we expect as an organization. They fully and clearly understand that. And Moving forward, we will hold all of ourselves accountable. Me included. It starts here. As Jed said, it starts with ownership, and he's made it very clear to me on exactly what we need to do from this point forward, and we're going to do that, exactly that.
Specific case with the
You got
affidavit.
the follow-up, you get the last question,
Well,
you got
I
the
mean,
follow-up.
he didn't answer my question.
I'm good at that.
Well, with Alden Smith, are you satisfied that there's nothing to this and there's nothing to be concerned about with his name appearing with alcohol in a police affidavit?
Anytime our players' names, Alden, if you want to address Alden specifically, we're concerned. And we're going to look into it as we have been and do our due diligence and then make a decision. So as of right now, there's nothing to report.
All right, thank
Come
you.
on, Janie, come on. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.